through your directly or through the Solicitor General if you feel more comfortable doing so. Anyway, the Solgen's job is supposed to take up the charges for the OF. Up to you. It's your call, sir.
Thank you very much, Associate Justice Rosario. If I may, if it may please the court, before I answer the question, may this representation be allowed to make a brief opening statement to provide context insofar as these issues are concerned?
How long will it, if you don't mind me asking, how long will it take you to conclude your brief statement?
Very brief.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Associate Justice. Honorable Justice, Honorable Chief Justice, and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court, good afternoon. Thank you for granting us the opportunity to present our side today. To begin with, I think it will be wise to explain the context within which this policy move is being undertaken. The bigger picture as to why we did what we did, so to speak. First, we are still recovering from the pandemic that gave us the hardest economic blow, a contraction of 9.5% in 2020, the lowest since post-World War II. To address both health and economic needs, during that crisis, the government had to borrow more money, utang na minana ng kasalukuyang administrasyon. By 2022, when President Marcos Jr. took office, our national debt soared by 6.8 trillion pesos. This surpasses the combined debt of all previous administrations, bringing our debt to GDP ratio from its lowest level of 39.6% in 2019 to a high of 60.9% in 2022. And now it is our responsibility to repay these large borrowings. We inherited this debt, but we do not intend to simply pass this burden onto the next administration. We intend to try our best to reduce it. Against this backdrop, geopolitical tensions, two hot wars, a trade war, and the looming Cold War, as well as supply chain disruptions from the pandemic, interrupt our recovery efforts. Around the world, inflation has surged and central banks raised interest rates. Thus, Congress mandated in the 2024 General Appropriations Act to sweep the unused, idle, and excess funds of government-owned and controlled corporations to raise more resources to support the President's priority programs to enhance economic recovery efforts. As the Solicitor General has accurately pointed out early in this oral argument, this move is a temporary and common sense approach within which legal bounds to fund critical government programs for Filipinos. And I implore you, Your Honors, to consider our job at the Department of Finance. We are the government's chief fundraiser. We are called to steward the nation's fiscal stability. It is our duty to put every peso to work for the people. Hindi po pwede na kapag may nakitang malaking pondo na natutulog at hindi nagagamit para sa kapakanan ng taong bayan, hahayaan na lang. Sleeping funds serve no one. Every idle peso is a disservice to every Filipino. To put into perspective, based on the 2024 GAA, we had an appropriations of 5,768 billion pesos, of which only 4,273 billion pesos were supportable by revenues. Thus, reckoned on a daily basis last year, our expenditures amount to 15.8 billion pesos a day in cash, of which 11.71 billion pesos in cash were funded by revenue collections, and the rest, 4.1 billion pesos in cash by loans. Every 24 hours, kada 24 na oras. This is the daily math of governance. So at dusk, when the sun sets over Manila Bay, a spectacle I see from my office, I would often ask myself, nakakolekta ba tayo ngayon ng 11.71 billion pesos sa araw na ito. The national budget is a catalog of expenditures. Every item therein has a price tag, paid in taxes, non-tax revenue, or by debt. Our role in the DOF is to pick the tab of what the budget has ordered. Kung kulang, we pay in credit. And we are wary not to max out the National Philippine Credit Card. Thus, this move to sweep the unused excess idle funds of GOCCs is in line with the principles of our medium-term fiscal framework to ensure the country's macro-fiscal stability. And that is to consolidate all public resources so that these are mobilized and utilized to gain the maximum benefit and high multiplier effects for the economy and the Filipino people. This framework ensures that we reduce our fiscal deficit from a high of 8.6% of GDP in 2021 to only 3.7% in 2028. Last year, we already hit our target of reducing this to 5.7%. This will allow us to sustainably reduce our national government debt to 56.3% in 2028. And just as what we did during the pandemic through Bayanihan 1 and 2, we see this as a Bayanihan 3. A Bayanihan 3 not funded by new taxes, but one funded by the funds already in our possession.
Senator, are you about to wind up?
Just a few more minutes, then I will happily answer all your questions. Just to
Hindi
provide
nilagay pala yan,
context.
di po nasasagot yung tanong.
I'm sorry?
It's okay.
Yes,
Please proceed.
Thank you. But one funded by the funds already in our possession. A Bayanihan 3 that mobilizes all our available resources, all idle, excess, and civic public funds to help the economy recover faster, create more jobs, increase incomes, and reduce poverty in the process. We wouldn't be doing our job, Your Honors, if we willfully neglect our duty to exercise fiscal prudence in this matter just because it is unusual. We wouldn't be doing our job if we clung to convention over common sense. And now let me respond to some points brought up during the previous sessions. First, why PhilHealth? Alinsunod po sa batas. Hindi lamang po ang PhilHealth ang nag-iisang GOCC na aming inutusang magbalik ng sobrang pondo ayon sa 2024 GAA. Tinignan po ng DOF ang lahat ng mga natutulog na pera ng lahat ng GOCCs. And with our extensive review, we found out that PhilHealth has accumulated a very substantial excess, unused, and idle funds over the past few years. This is not beneficial for one reason. Every peso unused is a benefit denied to a Filipino citizen. After carefully and cautiously computing the reserve funds of PhilHealth, its excess, unused, and idle money actually amounted to a staggering 183.1 billion pesos.
Senator,
Yes, sir.
I'll just respectfully
Yes.
reiterate my question.
Yes.
And please answer as briefly as possible,
Yes,
given the limited time that we have.
yes. If your question
So
is,
it is your position, sir, that if the funds is considered by your office as excess, idle, and unused, meaning no longer relevant insofar as attaining the objectives of that GOCC, whether PhilHealth or whatever, it could be appropriated to other uses.
yes, based on the mandate given to us by Congress as found in the General Appropriations Act, particularly 1D.
Congressman Attorney Neri,
Yes,
do you
sir.
agree?
Yes. I really commiserate with our former colleague in Congress because he's a tough position. Of the executive to gather all these unused funds, of course, it's important. It's fiscal responsibility to gather unused funds. But fiscal responsibility, Your Honors, please, ends when it transgresses the Constitution. Ito ang question namin, Your Honor. Kung importante sa executive palang kunin ang pera ng GOCC, why did not President Marcos put Section 1D in the NEP? Kasi he was expecting 281 billion. Why did the House and the Senate did not put in Section 1D? Because it's only 281 billion. It was the BICAM, in all its wisdom, who increased it to 749 billion, at ngayon nag-isip sila, ay, paano natin ponduhan ito? Aha, GOCC, in-include nila yon. So that does not justify, Your Honor. If the executive thinks we need to mop up liquid unused funds, yeah, but put it in a proper way, Your Honors, please. Put it in the NEP and have it approved by both houses of Congress rather than surreptitiously insert it through a BICAM committee, Your
You have
Honors.
already made your point, Congressman. This is, again, for question is addressed to a good Secretary of Finance, and is related somehow to the previous question. It was argued, meaning the group of petitioners, that there was invalid delegation of authority, as the power to transfer appropriations is vested only among the select government officials, which includes, the President, but not the Secretary of the DOF. As allegedly what happened in this case, in the implementation of DOF Circular 003, 2024. Now, Mr. Secretary, how will you reconcile this argument with the doctrine of qualified political agency, which postulates that the heads of the various executive departments, including the DOF Secretary, are the alter egos of the President, and thus the actions taken by such heads in the performance of their official duties are deemed the acts of the President unless the President himself should disapprove such acts?
With all due respect, Associate Justice, I will leave the legal arguments to our Solicitor General, and I will confine my responses to the policy at hand.
May I request Sergeant Guevara to please take the mic? The mic. Please use the mic.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Your Honor, that constitutional provision is not at all applicable because that provision speaks of savings. And savings, as defined in NAGAA and as ruled by this honorable court, pertains to that portion or that balance of an appropriated amount that is no longer needed for certain reasons, like the project for which that fund has been allocated has already been completed, or that project or program has been finally abandoned, or for the reason that due to some efficiency measures taken by that government agency, then certain amounts were saved. So it is that concept of savings, Your Honor, that is referred to under Section 29(3) of Article 6 of the Constitution, for which only the President, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the heads of the constitutional commissions, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House are authorized to transfer or to effect, to augment another item in their respective appropriations. So that is not the one that is the subject of Section 1D of the GAA 2024.
Congressman, okay, you're already excused. I have one last question for Secretary Recto. Short lang po. Which other GOCC or GOCCs, meaning other than PhilHealth, have remitted their fund balances to the National Treasury pursuant to Item 1D of the 2024 GAA And how much was each remittance? Were those remittances already spent? If so, for what purpose? My second last question. If the court were to direct the government to return to PhilHealth and the other GOCCs their respective remittances, can the government comply with such directive? What impact will such ruling have on the financial position of the government? Kindly elaborate.
Yes, thank you very much, Associate Justice. There is another GOCC that did remit to the National Treasury, and this is the PDIC, roughly about 104 billion. We could submit to the court the list of projects that that remittance was funded, including the Salary Standardization Law 6 for government employees. Now, having said that, Mr. Bray, I think your last question was, will the government comply with a ruling of the Supreme Court?
Yes, and what will
Yes.
happen to the government
Yes.
after that?
Naturally, if the government were to tell the executive to return the money, we will include that in the National Expenditure Program for 2026. But having said that, assuming if the ruling were for 2025, that will add a fiscal pressure to our deficit. And that would entail us not hitting our deficit targets this year. And if we miss that, then we may not attain our coveted credit rating upgrade that we foresee in the next 18 months.
Thank you, Secretary.
Yes, thank you.
Can I, Madam Clerk of Court, can I also call to the podium the members of the panel of experts, amicus curiae? I'm sorry. Former Secretary Margarito Tebes, please. For the benefit of the audience, especially the non-lawyers who have been closely monitoring the proceedings in these cases, amicus or amici curiae is a legal term which means friend of the court. As you may have observed, the members of the panel, they all look friendly and sociable, amiable as well, just like Justice Amy. Now, this friend is a person or organization that is not a party to the case, but permitted to assist the court by offering their expertise or insight that has a bearing on the issues in this case. So we will now try to seek their assistance and expertise to guide us in the handling of these cases. Secretary Tebes, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. And the others.
I was very reluctant to include you guys in my interpellation because I really find it difficult to pronounce your designation as friend of the court. Did I pronounce it correctly? Amici curiae. Okay na, no? Pwede na, no? Curiae. You have characterized as a prudent fiscal strategy the utilization towards productive programs of idle public resources. You have likewise noted and enumerated the acts of previous administrations, if you remember, specifically those of former Presidents Ramos, Arroyo, and Duterte, of authorizing the transfer of idle resources to support the country's fiscal needs. It would thus appear that there is a consistent practice of previous administrations of reallocating public funds considered as idle to support other government programs. Based on available data, and in your informed opinion, Secretary, have these past allocations of idle funds historically made a significant and positive public impact on government projects? In other words, have these reallocations proven to be prudent fiscal strategies?
Can I answer now, Your Honor?
Yes,
Are you
anyway,
done?
but I may just explain. I answered the question to gather information on the historical effectiveness of the previous reallocations made by the government of idle public funds. A practice which appears to continue and apply to the present situation of reallocation of PhilHealth funds. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. These situations took place under very difficult circumstances. In the case of President Ramos, it was done during the time when the Philippines and Asia were actually confronted with the Asian financial crisis. So that in the case of President Ramos, I recall he said that let's try to get all the balances from different institutions that are now in the different banks and utilize this to address the crisis. And that was helpful during his time because I recall that after such decision, the government or the administration of Ramos was able to address the fiscal problem. In fact, they were able to register a surplus for a year. In the case of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, it's a similar situation because as most of us who have observed the operations of special funds, these special funds tend to have a tendency to increase, and therefore, in terms of what the Secretary of Finance said, there probably should be a way of making use of these funds if they're not utilized. No? So that particular executive order, I understand, has not yet been abolished, and I think that could still be implemented, but again, in very rare circumstances. In the case of President Duterte, as again the Secretary of Finance indicated, again, this similar situation, balances from different government agencies would have to be reallocated as needed in response to COVID-19. So these circumstances, in fact, were already there. But of course, even in the case of the 2024, again, the effects of the COVID have actually been actually permeated all the way to 2024. There were, of course, other considerations, but there was a fact here that indeed the amount of the unprogrammed appropriations increased from about 280 to about 700. Historically, Your Honor, the average is about only 5% of the General Appropriations Act. 2024 was about 13%. No. A prudent number, more or less, would be about 5%. No. So as to your question, yes, there were similar instances. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary, for sharing your thoughts on these issues. Now it will be the turn of Dr. Beverly Ho, Lorraine C. Ho. So,
Dr. Beverly Ho is not around.
sorry. Anyway, that's supposed to be my last question. The other who are the other members of the panel?
We have Dr. Solon and Ms. Zara and Mr. Africa.
Okay, anyway, I'll just forego this last question. I'm done. Thank you very much, Chief.
Considering that it's already past 5 o'clock, and it's a long day for the court because we had an en banc session this morning. Today's oral arguments is hereby adjourned to resume tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. May we request the Solicitor General to submit to us the message or the statements of Secretary Recto earlier, which was not completed, so that every one of us can read that. Please make it a part of your submission. Thank you. And also, we also request that all those present today to come back tomorrow for oral arguments because some other members may still ask questions for the Secretary and other people present today. Okay? So thank you very much. We'll adjourn today.